When the prana is inhaled through the left nostril, then it must be exhaled through the other. When it is inhaled through the right, hold it inside and then exhale through the other nostril. The yamini who practices in this way through the right and left nostrils alternately purifies all of his nadis within 3 months. If you are just learning pranayama, you may easily be confused about which nostril you should be breathing through. You have to maintain awareness of what you are doing. After inhalation, the breath is retained and then exhaled through the opposite nostril. Then you inhale through the same nostril through which you exhaled. After a few weeks of practice, it becomes a rhythmic pattern and there will be no confusion. An important factor has been omitted in this verse, and that is the correct ratio for inhalation to retention to exhalation. It is not sufficient to practice pranayama just by breathing in and out. The length of each breath must be counted. Start cautiously with the ratio 1 to 1 to 1. Even if you are capable of retaining the breath for longer, after a week or more, you can increase the ratio 1 to 2 to 2 and progress from there. The duration of each breath should be increased gradually. For example, supposing you start by breathing in for a count of 3, holding for 6, exhaling for 6. Every 3 days, you can increase the length of each phase by 1 count until you reach your capacity. Pranayama must be developed slowly and systematically so the lungs and nervous system are never harmed in any way. That is why it is always recommended that pranayama only be practiced under the guidance of a teacher or guru. According to the Jaranda Samhita, there are 3 stages of pranayama. In the first stage, inhalation is for 12 matras or counts, retention 48, and exhalation 24. In the second stage, inhalation is 16 matras, retention 64, and exhalation 32. The highest stage is inhalation 20 matras, retention 80, and exhalation 40, 5 to 55. In the complete and final stage of pranayama, retention is also done after exhalation. The time of one mantra or count is very important. Today, a metronome can be used, but traditionally there were 4 ways to judge the time. The time taken to circle the knee and snap the fingers, the time taken to clap the hands 3 times, the time taken for the breath to go in and out while in deep sleep, the time taken to chant Om. Of course, during pranayama practice, it is not practical to snap your fingers, etc. Counting has to be done mentally in a calm manner. 1 Om, 2 Om, 3 Om. When pranayama is performed without repetition in mantra, it is known as nigarbha. When mantra is repeated as sagarbha, the method of sagarbha nadi shodhana given in the Garanda Samhita is done by inhaling through the left nostril while repeating the Vayu Bija mantra Yam for 16 matras, holding the breath while repeating Yam for 64 matras, and exhaling through the right nostril while repeating the Bija mantra for 32 matras. Then raising the fire from the root of the navel, contemplate on its light associated with the earth element. Repeating the Agni Bija Ram for 16 matras, inhale through the right nostril and retain the breath while repeating Ram for 64 matras. This is the traditional method, and there are variations. Swami Sivananda of Rishikesh, for example, describes a method of Nadi Sadhana, which includes visualization of the process of purification. Contemplate the luminous orb of the moon at the tip of the nose. Inhale through the left nostril, repeat Vam for 16 matras. Perform retention while repeating Vam for 64 matras, and imagine nectar flowing through the nadis and purifying them. Then exhale through the right nostril while steadily contemplating on the Lam mantra for 32 mantras. Example, ratio 1 to 4 to 2. However, such high proportions of inhalation, exhalation, and retention are unnecessary. The ratio has to be adjusted to individual capacity. During pranayama practice, try to reduce the movement of the breath to a minimum and increase the duration of breathing to the maximum. If you find yourself gasping or become restless and exhausted, or forcing the breath, it should reduce your ratio and counting. If boils, pimples, diarrhea, constipation, or fever occur, it is most likely due to the nadis rebalancing and purifying themselves. However, you should check that your lifestyle and diet are suitably balanced and regular, and that your asana practice is systematic. Yogi Swatmarama states the Nadi Sadhana will purify the nadis within 3 months. Of course, other conditions have to be met for this to take place. You need to practice regularly for extended periods, devoting many hours to the practice of pranayama only. Perhaps, in fact, if the final stage of Nadi Sadhana with the ratio 20 to 80 to 40 to 60 were practiced, the nadis would be purified within 3 months. For most people, it will take longer. If you revert back to an indulgent lifestyle, again, the nadis will become pure. Certain disciplines have to be maintained until the kundalini is awakened. Otherwise, old conditions will recur. Keep going.
Yeah, but I just want to say, Sue, are you still there?
Hi.
Oh my God, you were laying on top of the earth. It was so funny. I couldn't see you.
That's right. I am an earth goddess. Get over it.
Remember, yesterday I couldn't figure out what that fourth number was. It's the retention at the bottom of the exhale. Makes sense now. Okay, that's it.
You know what I like about this is, and I keep on seeing it as sort of a cautionary thing, is that it is so personal. If you went in and you tried to do some of those ratios, even forget about retention at the end, you know, if you were only doing the 3 steps and you were trying to do some of those ratios, I would immediately pass out right here on this nice wooden floor. I'd be down. But because I've been doing yoga with you guys for so long, and one of the things that Amanda says repeatedly is that you do it in stages, you do what you can do, you do what feels good, and not what the chick sitting next to you is doing, you know, all that sort of thing. It's good. And I almost wish that the author of this, that she had written more cautionary notes than she did. Like at the beginning of every paragraph, she had in black bold ink, you know, pay attention to yourself, pay attention to what you can do, build this up, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's a nice clear explanation of the ratios, you know, the inhale, the retention, and the exhale. And I like that. It's a nice direction manual.
Retention should be practiced perfectly 4 times a day, early morning, midday, evening, and midnight, so that retention is gradually held up to 80 counts in one sitting. Those who are completely dedicated to a life of hatha sadhana should practice pranayama at the 4 specified times, but of course, with our present social commitments and way of life, few of us would find this possible. For the average person, it is sufficient to practice once a day. It is best to get up early in the morning, take a bath, do neti kunjal if necessary, then asanas and pranayama. If you also have the opportunity to do sadhana in the evening, then do it before eating. The specified times for practice are important in correlation to body rhythms and solar lunar activities. At these times, there is a changeover of body and external energy rhythms, and Sushuma Nadi is more likely to become active. Early morning means an hour and a half before sunrise, and it is called Brahma Murta, the period of Brahma. At this time, the subconscious mind is active and if you are sleeping then, you will most likely be dreaming. It is a time when unconscious experiences are more likely to manifest. Evening, around the time of sunset, is called Sandha. Sandhya is the meeting of day and night. It represents the time when Ida and Pingala merge with Sushumna in Ajna Chakra. The external influences of the sun setting or the evening commencing affect body rhythms and functions, making it conducive to the merging of the pranas in Sushumna. Similarly, at midnight and midday, there is a changeover in the external and internal energies. All becomes tranquil. Midnight, in particular, is the time of sadhakas to awaken Shakti. It is called the witching hour because the ghosts in the mind become active. Brain functions operate differently at night, and different chemical hormones are released. At these specified times, there is a change in the levels of energy in Ida and Pingala. During each cycle of Ida and Pingala, there are high and low phases when energy reaches either a peak or an end. In between each cycle, there is a period when the energy is stable and, therefore, it is the most appropriate time for sadhana and breath retention. So the times recommended for the practice of retention have been chosen on account of the biological and pranic activities that are taking place then. For most people, it is not advisable to practice pranayama at midnight unless specified by the guru. If you practice then, it will disturb the normal pattern of living, and the people living around you will consider you absurd. Also, because the unconscious mind becomes active at this time. If negative impressions come to the surface, you might have frightening experiences which you may not be able to cope with. If you practice pranayama in the morning or evening and live a simple life, your pure thoughts will exorcise these ghosts so that positive experiences unfold. Until the mind and body are purified, go slowly with your practices according to the Guru's instructions. Do not be overenthusiastic. Pranayama should be done in correct proportion to other practices and your routine daily activities. Other forms of yoga should also be integrated into the sadhana so there will be balanced development of your personality. A person who goes headlong into sadhana cannot maintain the schedule for many years. Gradually increase your sadhana according to time available and your mental, physical, and psychic capacity. Not only are particular times of the day specified for pranayama practice, there are also seasonal recommendations. The Jaranda Samhita enumerates the times of the year when hatha yoga should be practiced. One should not begin the practice of yoga in these seasons: Hemant, early winter; Sashira, late winter; Grishma, summer; and Varsha, monsoon. If practiced, yoga causes sickness. It is said that one should begin the practice of yoga Vasant, spring, and Sharad, autumn. Thereby the yogi attains success and verify he becomes free of disease. At first, there is perspiration. In the middle stage, trembling. In the highest stage, complete steadiness, and therefore the breath should be withheld. When the body and mind are purified and the quantum of prana is increased, then various physical symptoms manifest during pranayama. The body becomes hot due to increased activities of the sympathetic nervous system. If it perspires, irrespective of cool weather, pranic awakening has definitely taken place. It is possible for hot flushes to occur, or you may not even notice any excess heat. In the second stage, there may be quivering or sensations in the spine, or perhaps twitching of the hands, face, and various other muscles. When the mind, body, and breath become completely steady, the practice is nearly perfect. The final stage is when the breath stops moving itself. Initially, when the pranic flow becomes intense, the peripheral parts of the body may vibrate. Impulses rush through the central nervous system and create itching or tingling sensations. The prana accumulates in different regions and may create strange sensations in the chest, abdomen, intestines, or excretory organs. And sometimes within sounds, whining sounds come from the lower intestines for excretory passage. Joranda Samhita states that the first stage of pranayama gives heat, the middle stage gives rise to tremor, particularly in the spinal column, whilst the final stage of pranayama leads to levitation. The Shiva Samhita further states that through the strength of constant practice, the yogi obtains Bukhari or Buchari Siddhi, control of the earth element. He moves as a frog, jumps over the ground when frightened by clapping hands. Various siddhis or perfection may be attained with the awakening of the different chakras. The first center of chakra, which should be activated in Muladhara. Muladhara is the source of the earth element. What does earth element represent? Earth signifies the quality of cohesion, weight, and gravity. It is associated with the sense of smell and controls the basic physical structure of the body. When Kundalini rises from Muladhara, levitation is said to occur because the magnetic force within you, which normally holds you down, undergoes a change. You become light like a feather. The flow of prana can be understood in terms of light rays. Science has so far defined light in two ways. One as waves, the other as particles. The waves and particles are said to vibrate at different velocities and frequencies, thus creating the various colors of the light spectrum. But when the waves and particles move simultaneously in a straight line, then there is a laser beam. Similarly, in the body, Ida and Pingala represent the fluctuating light waves. If the intensity of their vibration is increased and they function together rather than alternately, they will move together through the central passage, Sushumna, like a laser beam. That is Kundalini, and at the time, there can be no extreme condition in the body. When the Kundalini Shakti reaches the highest center, Sahasrara, it stays there for a period of time. Everything becomes still. There is no creation, no breath. Prana is held in the highest brain center, united with consciousness. Rub the body with the perspiration from the labor of pranayama. The body derives firmness and steadiness from this. When the body is unclean, impurities are excreted through the pores of the skin in the form of perspiration. When the body has been purified, only water, salt, and hormones are excreted through the skin. When the body becomes hot due to pranayama, excess water may be lost. The Shiva Samhita states, when the body perspires, rub it well, otherwise the yogi loses his dhatu. There are 7 dhatu known as sapta dhatu: blood, fat, flesh, bone, marrow, skin, semen, or ova. To maintain these, certain chemical hormones are produced, and when they cannot be stored, they are expelled from the system. If there is perspiration due to pranayama, chemical hormones are released unnecessarily. Therefore, the perspiration should be rubbed back into the skin so they are reabsorbed through the pores. This also helps to rebalance the system and tone the nerves and muscles.
Before going on, Amanda, are you still there? I mean,
yeah, I'm here.
what this particular practice of rubbing perspiration back into your body, or rubbing your body with perspiration. So does this mean only when you become purified, or does this mean when you do this all the time, even as you're working towards greater awareness?
I actually, in college, I had a teacher and I'd practice with him 6 times a week. It was kind of Ashtanga-y. but not like the full sequence. And at the end, every time we do Shavasana, he'd make us do this, where we'd have to like massage all of our tissues. And he said like he used to say there are oils secreted when you're practicing yoga, and it's beneficial to get them back into you. So I'm assuming that means all the time, but maybe he had a misperception. I don't know. We're
So
gonna have to look that up.
yeah, and because the related question is, here it's recommending that you rub, basically sweat and oils or whatever is coming out, you rub it and, you rub it back into your pores. And in Western life, if you did a sweaty yoga, one of the first things you might do is hop in the shower.
Right.
You're home. So I'm assuming this is saying, well, don't do that. Is in other words, don't hop in the shower, because then you're losing some of the benefits of your practice.
I think we would like massage ourselves and then lay in Shavasana. So I feel like if you do that, then you could take a shower afterwards. I mean, in Ayurveda, they say certain things about the shower, like if you take hot water to your head, it could dry or create vata for your cerebrospinal fluid. I always think about that every time I'm taking a shower. So I wonder if like that speaks to, if you're not massaging it back into you, maybe there's like a drying of the dhatus, of the tissues.
Because I'm new at this, I wasn't understanding at what stage they were saying sweating happens.
So when you're doing pranayama, I think they're saying the first stage is sweating, the second stage is shaking. But I've experienced this in like meditation practice, which I guess like moves the prana through your body. So first you become very, very hot and you're like drenched in sweat. And it's when Shushumna starts moving up the spine because there's just so much energy. And then I guess the second phase, I didn't realize it was like phases, but it's cool that they're codifying it like this. So the second phase is your limbs start shaking a bit, like jumping. It's weird. Like your hands will start lifting up and twitching, your arms will twitch, your legs will twitch. And I guess the third stage, which I have not achieved, you levitate off the floor. But this is the first time I've heard any kind of scientific explanation of why that would happen.
You don't actually levitate off the floor. You feel like you are.
I don't know. I don't don't have any cities, any superpowers, so I don't know. This is what they say. Like in the Yoga Sutras, they have a whole section on the accomplishments or like what happens. And some of them are wild, like you could walk through walls, and there are these stories like in the Ramayana, where Hanumanji, who's a yogi, he can make himself very, very small or very, very large, and he can make himself so large that he can leap over an ocean. So I don't know.
I don't think it's physical.
Yeah, it's to each his own, right? It's like my teachers always said, like, don't believe anything that's being told to you. Just try the different practices and see what happens. So I haven't had a feeling of levitation. I've had a feeling of like leaving my body.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what it means. I don't know, but I'm not enlightened, so I can't give you direct information about that.
So what were you told about the sweating? Because my culture and also Chinese medicine tells us something a little different. So I'm just curious to see what you were told about it.
Well, he never called it sweat. He would say that the oils that are released during asana should be massaged back in to nourish the tissues. He'd say that there are special oils that come out while you're practicing.
So according to Greek culture and also Chinese medicine, when your pores are open, yeah, maybe they release stuff, but they're more nervous about things coming in, like wind, cold, dampness, and that's what causes disease. So, for example, after I cup someone, I'm very careful to like cover them up, heat them up, and tell them to stay covered. Like right now, I'm feeling a little bit of a sweat. I had warm water. I wouldn't take my clothes off and let wind go in. I would either wait till it dissipates under my clothes or wipe it down with a towel to alleviate stuff going in. Have you been taught that?
Yeah, like when you're doing panchakarma practices to people in Ayurveda, like when you're doing oil massage in Ayurveda and Marmani, you have to make sure they don't get cold. You have to protect their heads, right? It's the same with the winds. Even in Italian culture, my grandmother and my mother's like always about like the wind, you can't the
Yeah.
wind will make you sick, the wind will make you sick. And it's the same in Ayurveda, but pranayama is a little different than somebody externally creating openness for you. It's like it's almost like an internal burning. Like there's if I am in a really advanced state where I have prana literally rising, I'm not going to be able to get a chill. You know what I mean? Like you become very, very hot, and it's like a internal burning away of impurities, and I don't know if that's the same kind of sweating. And the thing is, the practice we would do, it wasn't like a vinyasa practice in college. It was closer to hatha, where you weren't drenched in sweat. It was like more meditative. I don't know how to explain that.
I can relate because I tend to run cold and I'm affected by wind and cold. But when I was pregnant, I was so hot that no matter what cold I was near,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't affect me.
Yeah, right. It's like an internal heat. I totally relate. I had the same thing for a couple of months when I was pregnant. Yeah, it's just an internal energy that's produced that, you have these yogis who are living in the Himalayas and they're in caves and it's very cold and they have all these practices that they do to keep themselves warm from the inside out. They don't need a heater in the cave or anything like that. They were actually, we did pranayama yesterday in teacher training, and Mackenzie was talking about the like brain mechanics behind it. And have you guys heard of the Hoth? No, YouTube, look on YouTube. He's this guy, and he's not a yogi per se. Like he hasn't, I don't know, studied traditional yoga, but he does these sort of techniques that could be equated to pranayama. And he's famous for like taking these freezing cold baths and being able to regulate his immune system with his mind and breath work. And he's able to go on these crazy hikes in the middle of winter on these crazy blustery mountains in just his shorts. So he's super famous for that. And all these scientists wanted to sort of study him and see if he was some kind of like freak of nature. But then he taught the techniques to a bunch of other guys and they were able to do it too. And a lot of it's breath work. So I think that we're like a lot of times not harnessing the internal power of the brain that we're capable of, that can start to change the way the internal body regulates itself. Because, no one's giving us that information in our culture, right? I mean,
I wonder if ultimately, though, those people will die young because they abuse their body and they let cold in.
Well, they're not letting the cold in. They're not cold. Like you should YouTube it. It's interesting. He doesn't get cold. He's like warm. Like you take his temperature and it never drops.
But meanwhile, he's submerged in cold.
Yeah, that's the point. He's like able to internally regulate. And there's all these discussions in these texts about how we're so affected by everything external to us, not just emotionally, but physically. And all these practices are meant to make us so resilient that we're not affected by the material world anymore. There's this idea that consciousness changes matter. And they've done studies to demonstrate that as well. And I think that we think that, you know, when you're not aware of all this stuff and you don't have access to these practices and you don't have direct experience of it, like, you know, we're living in the world and it seems like we are subject to every change of the world, especially in Ayurveda. They say, oh, whatever happens in the seasons happens in your body.
Yeah.
But all these practices are meant for us to transcend sort of that fluctuation of like hot and cold, good and bad, all that stuff. It's really like it makes us super human, apparently. But I thought it was interesting in that portion where they said, if you're like in the beginning, if you're not purified internally, you're sweating toxins out. So it's different. So I don't know if you'd want to massage that back in.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's what, you know, that's why I was a little confused. I would automatically think I want to wipe it off.
Yeah, but I mean, I can't speak to what those teachers knew that they were teaching in college. I can speak to like what I've learned afterwards, which is, you know, what this person's saying, right? They're saying it's in the beginning, maybe it's, you're not supposed to rub them back in. I don't know. Did you guys catch that from the reading or did I misinterpret that?
No, it was that you're supposed to, is that what you're asking? That you're supposed to rub them back in, right?
Well, she was saying in the beginning there are toxins coming out, but then after that it's just salt, oils, and hormones, and I caught that you're supposed to rub that in.
Yes.
Right, but my question was, what about in the beginning when you're not so pure? Do you, in other words, do you rub the toxins back in or not? Or
Oh, well, I think that's where it's interesting in Hatha, they say lead with the purification practices.
yeah,
Like don't lead with all this other stuff.
yeah. So
Like
basically
purify
what we're
first.
saying is by the time you get to this, you're already,
You're
can
pure.
rub it again because you're pretty pure.
Yeah.
Okay.
But now it's making sense, like the way I was taught to teach pranayama was with, like we call it the beginner pranayama practices, and then we have the intermediate and then the advanced pranayama practices, and you're not generating exorbitant amounts of energy. It's just giving a lot of clarity to like the system I teach, where I maybe like didn't know the reason why it was in the order that it was in, but it's making more sense as we read this. Like we start with very purifying pranayamas as quote unquote beginner pranayamas, and we do it slowly and progressively. Like alternate nostril breathing is one of the pranayamas we teach beginners, and we do it like for a minute in the beginning, and we slowly build up and build up and build up. And he was saying if you do alternate nostril breathing for a long enough period of time, what do you say, three months, that it purifies all of the energetic rivers in the body. So it makes sense why that's a beginner pranayama. And then like when you're doing the other pranayamas, like breath of fire, Nauli, skull shining, all that generates so much energy. Like those are the pranayamas I've experienced where I'm like drenched in sweat. I get so hot. And then eventually when you start doing breath retention, which is an advanced form of pranayama, that's when I've experienced the jumping of the limbs and like the cessation of breath, and like that's when all the wacky stuff starts going down. Right. I guess sweating profusely is wacky, but you know what I mean, like the stuff that's like very unexpected, like the what do they call it, the second level. So it's making sense to me why we do what we do in the order that we do it. So yeah, I mean, if you're doing asana, is supposed to be, I don't know, asana is supposed to also be purifying though for the nadis, right?
Yes, that's
so
what
if you do it long enough.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, if you don't have a pure diet, and it's hard to get this through to students, they get very, very defensive. If I tell them to like stop drinking alcohol or stop smoking weed or taking drugs or, you know, stop eating sugar and packaged foods and things like that, I have to be so sensitive and like really wait. But I guess that really actually should be what's advised in the beginning, right? Because it makes you toxic.
Do you have a little diet guide?
Yeah, I do like Ayurvedic consultations for people where we change their entire lifestyle and diet. But again, it's like I with a lot of some students come to me and they're like, I am ready to change everything in my life.
Sorry, Beth,
But
the kids are getting one.
oh, no worries. I got one right here on me. Other people come in and they're like, most people, I would say like 90% of people come and they're like, I am not ready to change that much. I just want to like move on my mat. So maybe those are the people who shouldn't be massaging it back in. I'm surprised he was doing that with college students because, you know, college students are gross.
Mhm. Did they specify the 4 times? I know an hour and a half before sunrise. I know they mentioned midnight. And is it noon? Was the one after a half hour before sunrise noon?
I didn't catch that one. I just
I
caught
think
the
she said
twilight and the
midnight
morning.
around the time between afternoon and night, so like dusk. And I think she did say something about noon.
Well, she was saying you should not practice at midnight.
Yes.
I didn't catch
Well,
the other
that's
part.
because you might disturb your neighbors.
Well, no, because midnight is a pitta hour. It's
Is it?
it's like it's a hour of heat.
Yeah.
So noon would also be an hour of heat. Like I have never been advised to do pranayama at that time because you're generating heat. So wouldn't you want the protective qualities of the other hours? Did she say to do it at noon? I really didn't catch that part. I'm sorry.
Something about midday, and that's why I wasn't sure about the times.
I don't.
This is starting to run a little late.
Yeah, we can look into it and come back to the times in the morning.
Yeah, tomorrow I'll read the passage again and we'll come back.
Yeah, I was just. Okay, so let me lead you, or
You could do it.
take over breath work.
I don't know how to do that.
Okay, I'll lead you through it. So let's set up for a few rounds of nostril breathing. Bringing your right hand over to your nose, closing your right nostril, inhale through your left. Close left, exhale right. Inhale right. Close right, exhale left. Inhale left. Close left, exhale right. Inhale right. Close right, exhale left. Inhale left. Close left, exhale right. Inhale right. Close right, exhale left. Taking 4 more rounds on your own breath, adding retention if it's in your practice. You'll take your time to finish exhaling out through your left nostril. I'll set the timer for 20 minutes. Bringing hands to your heart. Namaste. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you, Alexandra, for reading.
Thank you, guys.
Have a nice day.
Tomorrow.
Bye, Sue.
Have a good one.